Welcome to your new favorite podcast, Glow Big with Stephanie. I'm your host, Stephanie, and this podcast is for all women. We want to inspire and empower you. We're going to bring you style, humor, entertainment, good intentions, big ideas, hope, and a little bit of sobriety in each and every episode. You can get all that and more at vibewithstephanie.com. But right now, grab yourself a sparkly water, put it in a pretty glass or a coffee, and get comfy and enjoy the show. Hey, I wanted to do a quick, shorty little episode on trauma. That is a subject that we could probably talk about forever and ever, but I'm not a therapist, but I did want to make sure that you knew that there were a couple of different types of trauma, and I'm kind of learning and looking into it, and I just wanted to share with you what I have found. So there's a trauma called little t. This is not minimizing the trauma, like, oh, it's just little t trauma, so it's no big deal, but there are different categories for it. Little t doesn't involve violence or a disaster, but it can cause significant distress. Could be like a breakup, a pet dying, losing your job, being bullied, rejected by a friend. And in my case, last week, this is why this came up, because I had COVID. I don't know why I still whisper that. I had to put a chicken down. We had to get ready for a hurricane, and my son was out of school for the week. And I had a lot going on. And this was like little t, little t, little t, right? COVID itself is traumatizing. You're laid out in bed, you're feeling terrible, brain fog is real, your memory is shot, everything kind of just stops or slows way down. And it just wasn't the right time for me to have things, slowing down, nor is it ever for anybody. And then having to put down my little chicken who I've had since she was a itty bitty girl for attacking my face. She's always been a little unpredictable. And then the hurricane coming and wondering whether my roof was still going to be over our heads or whether we were going to flood or if the oak tree was going to fall on the house. All this while getting ready to launch something. So for me, it was like these tiny little traumas. And then there's also emotional abuse. That is another form of little t. And little trauma doesn't often have PTSD associated with it. So big trauma is like a plane crash, war, loss of a loved one. Trauma response can look like exhaustion, confusion, sadness, anxiety, agitation, numbness, disassociation, ding, 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 and even physical arousal.
There is acute trauma.
That's where you had one single incident. There is chronic trauma, where it's repeated and prolonged domestic violence or abuse, just repeated trauma and prolonged. Complex trauma is exposure to varied and multiple traumatic events, where you're just like constantly getting exposed to all these horrible things. So there are a lot of different types of trauma. There are a lot of different reactions to trauma, but I wanted to make sure that you knew how normal it was to have that. Even if nothing humongous happened in your life, I think this is not a fact, but I think that all Americans are traumatized from 2020. There is no way that we're not all walking around traumatized and watching the news even still with all the things that we're hearing and that are happening. There's just no way that we're walking around free of trauma. So this is going to tie back to alcohol, because I know that we're using alcohol to numb and to feel better and to try and relax, because maybe that used to work before, but it doesn't now. It doesn't now. Alcohol actually sends you away with more stress and more mental health issues. And if you're feeling traumatized, whether it's little t, big T, doesn't even matter. If you stop drinking, if you force yourself to quit drinking for 3 to 5 days, you will start to feel better. The world will stop feeling like it's crashing down on you. And I know that's hard to believe. I know how hard it is to quit for 3 to 5 days. I do. Especially 3 days. I could never get to 3 days. So I know, but if you can find it in yourself to do that, it will take the load off and make the trauma not feel as traumatizing. Like I've even said before, the trauma of my childhood and the trauma of my mom dying and how I carried that with me like a brick and how once I got sober, now that trauma, I would say that was a big trauma and maybe a complex one because it was repeated over and over again. But over time with my sobriety, that doesn't seem so heavy anymore. It doesn't seem so traumatic anymore. I'm softer about it. It doesn't hurt as much. And that's not just something that came with time, because it has been, she died when I was 25. I'm 43 now. That didn't just come with time. It came with sobriety. So just know that if you're feeling like you're drowning and you're foggy and your motivation is low and you might even feel like really, really bad thoughts, that's a trauma response, which is normal, but it can lighten up on you if you quit drinking. A lot of us self-medicate. Substance abuse is one of the things that we use a lot to try to regain some kind of control, but really it just causes a lot of dysregulation. And over time, it can shape how you respond to things and who you are, and it gets really hard to get out of. It gets really hard to get out of. And I read a study or listened to a podcast where it's an actual fact that if you keep drinking and you keep retraining your brain to be one way, and that way happens to be impulsive, or that way happens to be aggressive, or whatever that way is, then that can stick that way forever, even once you're not drinking. I know I said that before about my mom too. When she said she had quit drinking, I could never believe her because she seemed drunk always, even when she said she was sober. So I know you think you're medicating. I know you think it's working to numb you, but it is not. It's actually working to make things worse. So some people find creative, healthy ways to manage their trauma, like committing to walking, committing to running or CrossFit or something new to obsess over. And some people start helping others, helping survivors of trauma, and that helps them. And I feel like this has been a big part for me. Helping others has helped me big time. I'm able to talk about it freely, and it's helping me heal. So helping others, committing to physical activity, those are things you can do to start healing yourself too. We talked to Angela Heronick a couple of podcasts ago, several podcasts ago, about fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And those are just different ways that we deal with our trauma. So fight would be you have anger, irritability, aggression. That's fight. And that's your way to show trauma. And maybe if you have flight, it's anxiety and fear and panic and worry. And then there's freeze, which is immobilization, disassociation, depression. And then there's fawn, which was a new one to me. I didn't know that one. This is people pleasing. You can't say no. You prioritize others. So there's different ways that we show our trauma. And it's normal. I just want you to know that it's normal, but it won't get better if you keep drinking. It's only going to get worse. So there's a treatment. I don't know much about it yet, but I'm going to find out. It's called EDMR, and it's eye movement desensitization, and it helps to release traumatic memories and associations. How cool is that? I've been hearing about it. I've been seeing it pop up everywhere. So I want to look into that, maybe find somebody who can talk to us about it more. But it's like a light treatment. You look into the light and you follow it with your eyes, and somehow it's supposed to help release some traumatic memories, which I know a lot of us need. So that's my podcast for today. I hope that wasn't too short, but you're not alone. We all have trauma. We're going to get through it, but it's not going to be, your release is not going to be on the bottom of an alcohol bottle. It's just making it worse. And you may not be able to see that right now, but I assure you it is. Try to do 3 or 5 days sober. And then if you make it 3, try to do 5. And if you make it 5, try to do 15. If you make it 15, try to do it 30. If you're not in my Sober Vibes group, hop over there, totally free. The women in there are amazing. I have never been a part of a group that was more awesome than Sober Vibes with Stephanie. So hop over there, and I will talk to you later. Have a great day. Bye. Thanks for joining Glow Big today. I hope you're leaving feeling empowered and ready to take on the world. Listen, if you're feeling burnt out and a little bit depleted, you should check out my Sober Up to Glow Up course. This is a 30-day value-packed, self-paced video course where you can log in and get yourself some self-care every day. There's yoga, there's breathing techniques, there is mocktail recipes and journals and affirmations, and of course, lessons on sobriety and what it's doing to your body and what to do to combat triggers and cravings. And it is just a lot of fun. It's going to benefit anybody, whether you're a big drinker or not. So go to vibewithstephanie.com/soberup-to-glow-up course and grab it now while it's in its beta pricing, because the price is going to go up almost double really, really soon.